let's get started. So the author said, وَاللَّعِبُ بِالْآلَاتِ اللَّهْوِ الْمُحَرَّمَةِ. Amongst the sins of the hands is playing with the forbidden instruments, or playing the forbidden instruments. كالطنبور والرباب والمزمار والأوتار. Like the tumbur, that's a type of guitar, and the rabab, I think that's a type of guitar, I'm not sure. Wal mizmar, and the pipe, that's like the flute or the clarinet or something like that. Wal autar, and the chords, the strings, so that's pianos, real pianos, harps, violins, wind instruments, and string instruments. The instruments that cause enchantment alone, that are that have the ability to make enchantment without being mixed with other instruments. Those ones, it's haram to play them. وَلَمْسُ الْأَجْنَبِيَّةِ عَمْدًا بِغَيْرِ حَائِلٍ. And touching the marriageable woman, the ajnabiyah. Ajnabiyah means foreign. Walamsul ajnabiyah, touching the foreign woman, that means marriageable. Amdan, intentionally. Bighayri ha'il, without a barrier between you and her, like clothing. So like shaking her hand, skin to skin. Even without desire. We are reading from the Summary of Obligatory Knowledge. He said, what's enchantment? Enchantment means a tarab. Tarab. The Arabic word is tarab. 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 What I just wrote there, if you can see my screen. That means euphoria. Euphoria. It's like being high. So the instruments that can do that without being mixed with other instruments, they can do that just by playing them alone, like a guitar or a piano or a violin, then those are haram to play. Some instruments don't do that alone, like drums. Even though drums might give you energy, but that's not the same thing we're talking about. That's clear? Any question there? Keyboard. So if it's not original sound, if it's not really from a string or wind, it's an imitation, a replica, imitation sound, that's not haram. That's what we learned. So I'm just going to say exactly what I said again. If it's not real string sound, it's not real wind, it's an imitation, it's a replica, it's not really a wind sound or a string sound, it's fake, it's not real, well, we learned that that's not haram. However, the rule ultimately goes back to if the sound causes enchantment alone without being mixed with other instruments. If it's not wind or string, it's not haram. Except for one type of drum that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. That some people call it tuba. I don't know what it's called in the hadith. You're welcome. And I mentioned to you before that years ago, this was over 10 years ago, I sat with one of the brothers who was working in the radio station and with the Madih program. And he was personally responsible for a lot of the production there, the sound production. He had there a huge keyboard. At the time was state of the art. Had 3 levels of keys, 3 rows. All sorts of sounds in there. I went there personally so that I could ask whoever's in charge there about what they're doing there and those sounds. They let me into the radio station. And I talked with that brother personally, and he said to me that he played every sound that that instrument had for the sheikh to hear. And that the sheikh heard every sound that that keyboard produced. And the sheikh approved all of the sounds except one sound, which was an imitation oud. Oud is some Arab guitar. Imitation oud, not the real thing. Sheikh didn't approve it. That's what the brother told me. He said to me, I personally played every note for the sheikh that this keyboard can produce. I said to him, even the flute sound, even the imitation flute? He said, yes. And that stuff at that time still sounded pretty close. I could tell the difference though. Some people who aren't, who don't have enough experience, they can't tell the difference between fake, the imitation replica, and the real sound. But if you have enough experience, you can tell the difference. For example, if it's real string, if you know what you're hearing, you can actually hear the chord vibrating. You can hear the chord vibrating. Or you can hear something that's scraping along the chord. Like they use a pick for a guitar to pluck the string. You can hear it scraping on the chord. So there's some things that if you know what you're listening to, you can tell the difference. Do you have any other question there? You say, I was always told that music was not permissible, so how we apply that ruling? That to say it this way is not very exact. That's just a blanket statement that doesn't give people proper details or give a person proper understanding of the judgment. What's haram are wind instruments and string instruments. Or, if you want to say it in another way, instruments that can cause euphoria or enchantment alone without being mixed with other instruments. That's haram. But not absolutely just blanket statement. If someone says music is haram, that will leave someone probably not understanding things. Also something we're going to talk about today, inshallah, that I want to give some details about. So if you talk to someone, say to them a statement that's not confusing. Say, wind instruments and string instruments are haram, if you want. A piano is a string instrument. Tayyib, so I'm moving on now. The author said, وَلَمْثُ الْأَجْنَبِيَّةِ عَمْدًا بِغَيْرِ حَائِلٍ. And touching the foreign woman, that means marriageable woman, amdan, intentionally, بِغَيْرِ حَائِلٍ, without a barrier. That means even without desire. Desire is not a condition for it to be haram. That's if she reached the age or stage at which she's normally desirable. Oh, bihi, or touching her with a barrier, bishahwa, but with desire. So if he shook her hand without a barrier, that's haram. If he shook her hand with a barrier, it's not haram as long as there's no desire. Also, what's not haram like if he recited on her head and she's wearing scarf, so he put her, if he can recite, if not, if he's a fraud, if he can do ruqya properly and he puts his hand on her head and she has a scarf on and he does that without desire, that's not haram. Walau ma'a jins. And also it's going to be haram if even with the same gender. Walau, even if ma'a, with jins, the same gender. Yani you cannot touch the same gender with desire. It's haram. That's a sin of the hand. Oh, mahramiyah, or non-marriageable relative status. Or non-marriageable relative status. Non-marriageable relative status. Non-marriageable relative, those are 5 kinds. Each one of these 5 have different cases. Mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, and nieces. 5. Those 5. These are non-marriageable relatives. Mothers, sisters, daughters, aunts, and nieces. Mothers, that means grandmothers, nursing mothers, mothers-in-law, stepmothers, sisters, half-sisters, full sisters, but not stepsisters. Stepsisters are marriageable. Stepsisters are marriageable. Can't touch those. And also, sister-in-law, she's marriageable. Mothers, sisters, daughters. Yeah, like granddaughter, nursing daughter, daughter-in-law, stepdaughter, if you consummate it with the mother. Mothers, sisters, daughters, aunts, whether from the father or the mother. Also great aunts, your grandfather's sister, your grandfather's sister, your grandmother's, well, sister, and nieces. So, is there a such thing as a marriageable relative? Yes, the cousins. Cousins are marriageable relatives. You can't touch those. Can't hug those. Can't be alone with those. The author says, وَتَصْوِيرُ ذِي رُوحٍ, depicting what has a soul. This is the one I want to go into details with you about it also, because a lot of people say also a statement that leaves people confused, not understanding the judgment properly. They say pictures are haram. Just like the brother asked, he said, always heard music is haram, just like that. So then that leaves a person not knowing the right judgment, the right details. Some people say pictures are haram, just like that. So let's talk about that. The author says, وَتَصْوِيرُ ذِي رُوحٍ, depicting what has a soul. That means depicting. Taswir means making an image of what the ruh, what can have a soul, or what has a soul. Yani, of something alive. It means you're depicting something. The meaning of your picture is that it's alive, this thing. Like SpongeBob, for example. Aren't they depicting something alive? Yes, they are. Is there really a SpongeBob? No, there isn't. الشرح, the explanation. أن من معاصي اليد تصوير ذي روح. is that amongst the sins of the hands is depicting what has a soul. سواء كان مجسما أو منقوشا في سقف, whether it's a figure, mujassam, made into a body, a figure, أو منقوشا في سقف, or it's engraved like chiseled into a ceiling, أو جدار, or a wall, أو ورق, or a page, أو منسوجا في ثوب, or it's woven into clothing, the picture of this thing that could have a soul, or this thing that's alive, أو غير ذلك, or other than that. وهذا متفق عليه في المذاهب الثلاثة, and this case is agreed upon in 3 madhabs out of the 4. المذهب الحنفي والمذهب الحنبلي والمذهب الشافعي, the Hanafi school, the Hanbali school, and the Hanafi school. So that means then the Maliki school have some difference in opinion here. So far what's being said is, before we talk about Maliki school, basically, whether your picture is a figure or it's not a figure, like, so figure means 3D, not a figure means 2D, for example. So what we're saying here is whether this image is a figure, 3D, really 3D, or not a figure, 2D, two-dimensional. According to these 3 schools, it's haram. Those CGI animations are not 3-dimensional, by the way. 3-dimensional, it's not 3-dimensional like Minions or Jurassic Park or something. Those images, that's not 3-dimensional picture, just for your information. It's 2-dimensional. Those are illusions. 3-dimensional means figures. So according to Shafi'i school, Hanafi school, and Hanbali school, flat pictures and figures are haram. Any questions so far? Only about what I said, not about something else. You said, why is drawing SpongeBob haram? Because it's drawing. What's the rule we're saying? The rule is depicting something alive, right? So that's why. Even if it's not real, but the meaning of the picture is that it's alive. Like if someone drew a dragon, for example, and it's just a figment of his imagination. So that's haram. Is it clear? Okay. بل يحرم في المذهب الشافعي تصوير ذي روح ولو بهيئة لا يعيش عليها. In fact, let's go a step further. In the Shafi'i school, it's not even permissible to initiate the picture of something alive even if you make it in a way that it can't be alive. You can't start a picture like that. In the Shafi'i school, you cannot initiate a picture of what can be alive, even if you make it in a way that is not alive. So you can't start the picture, in other words. لا يعيش عليها الحيوان أما قتناؤها وهي على هذه الهيئة. Now, what if there's already a picture of something that a picture of something, but it can't live like the way it's depicted? That means, when we say it can't live, means like it's just a head, or it's a body without a head. So according to Ash-Shafi'i, you cannot start such a picture. The body without the head, or the head without the body, something that can be alive. According to Ash-Shafi'i, you cannot initiate that. But what if it's done? Somebody did it already. Can you keep it? Yes, you can keep it, because it can't be alive without a body. The head can't be alive without a body. Or the body can't be alive without a head. So in other words here, what we're saying is, if you have an image of something that can be alive, from head to foot, for example, a man, from his head to his foot is drawn on your paper, or is a photograph, or is on your cereal box, then according to this saying, it's obligatory to render that picture in such a way that it cannot be alive. So what would you do? You will take off the head of that. If it was a figure, you'll break its head off, for example. So you render it in a way that's obligatory. You render it in a way that it cannot be alive. Okay. So let me ask you then. We said you cannot. We said it's forbidden to depict what can be alive. That much is clear. For example, from head to foot. Okay. Now, we said that if it's like that, yani something that can be alive, you have to make it so that it's not alive. Like it can't be alive. You have to make it so that it cannot be alive. So what you do, you rip the head off, for example. Now it's not haram anymore. Is that clear? Okay. So now that it's not haram anymore, can you keep that? Yes, you can keep it. Is that clear? Okay, one more thing. Is it permissible for you to start drawing just the head without the body, or start drawing the body without the head? According to Ash-Shafi'i, no, you cannot do that. That's it. Is it clear though? Is that judgment clear? Before you ask me why, is that clear? Okay. So, why, that's another matter. But that's the judgment. Now, it's okay, you can ask why, but just remember something. When you learn religious judgment, there's one thing is learning the judgment. What's the rule? The rule means permissible or not permissible, or obligatory or recommended. That's the rule. So that's what we want to focus on here. We're learning the rules. Another thing to learn is the proof. The proof, the evidence. That's not so much our focus, although that's fine. You can ask about that. That's what you're asking about. When you say why, that means what's the evidence or what's the reasoning? That's another matter. So let's keep it easy now. I have a lot of information to cover here. So, is there any other question before I move on? Everything's clear? Correct. According to a Shafi'i, you can't draw like half of a frog. Correct. Correct. Okay? The judgment is clear. What did I say though? Important, very important. According to Ash-Shafi'i. Did I say according to all the scholars with no difference in opinion? I didn't say that. So it's clear. The Shaykh says, أما اقتناؤها وهي على هذه الهيئة. So as for keeping these images that are already like that, you didn't initiate it. It's just a head without a body or a body without a head. It's already like that in a way that it's not haram and you didn't initiate it. You can keep it. وَأَبَاحَ الْمَالِكِيَّةُ تَصْوِيرُ ذِي رُوحٍ. Here, and the Malikis permitted, they allowed, they legalized depicting what can be alive, what has a soul. إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ مُجَسَّمًا, if it's not a figure. If it's not a figure. So then, what's the consensus of all of the scholars? What's for sure you cannot do, according to anyone? Figures. Like statues. So what's like that? What's like that is like dolls. Barbie doll. Teddy bears. If you have Transformers, if it's in vehicle mode, that's not haram. Vehicle mode. It's just a car or a plane or something. Because those are not haram. Like vehicles and plants and houses, buildings, models of things like that, that's not haram. Models of vehicles, imitation plants. Yeah, because it has humanoid shape. Yes. Correct. So if your Transformer is in robot mode, that means has a humanoid shape. It's like a man. It represents a man, the shape of a man, of a human. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَسْحَةٌ لِلنَّاسِ. And in that, the judgment of the Malikis, that is permissible to draw pictures as long as they're not figures, that's a big accommodation for the people. It's permissible to take that. It's permissible for you to follow the Maliki school. If you wanted to make pictures and say, I'm following the Maliki school, according to the Maliki school, it's not haram for me to draw SpongeBob, then it's not haram, according to that. If you want to follow the Shafi'i school, then you cannot draw SpongeBob. لأنه في هذا الزمن كثر اقتناء الصور. Because in this time, why that's a big blessing for the people, because in this time there's a lot of picture keeping. أما الصور المجسمة التي تقوم بنفسها. As for the figures that stand, the figures that can stand, إن كانت معمولة من خشب, whether they were made from wood, أو حديد or iron, أو نحو ذلك, or the likes of that, like what? Like plastic or glass. فهي حرام بالاتفاق في الشريعة المحمدية. Those are forbidden by the agreement in the law, in the sacred law revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. لكن تصوير ذي روح لا لعبادته كان جائزا في شرع من قبل سيدنا محمد. However, making figures of things that could live was not forbidden in the laws of prophets before our master Muhammad. وَأَمَّا تَصْبِيرُ الطُّيُورِ وَنَحْوِهَا فَجَائِزٌ. And as for taxidermy, like the animals, you catch the bird and then I don't know how you do that, and then you just have it like it's there in your house, the bird, the real bird, and it's dead, and it doesn't rot. Taxidermy. That's permissible, not haram. Not just a bird, something else too, like a lizard, for example. روى البخاري ومسلم وغيرهما من حديث ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما. Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and others narrated from the hadith of Ibn Umar, may Allah accept his and his father's deeds, أنه قال, that he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إن الذين يصنعون الصور يعذبون يوم القيامة. Indeed, those who make images, they are punished on Judgment Day. You say, is that allowed? This one, I don't know. It looks like that's not an image of a person. That's an image of an armor. It's an armor. It's not a figure of a person. It's not a depiction of a person. Think about an image like a word. Doesn't a word have a meaning? Right? How do you script the letters? Depending on how you draw the letters, it has a meaning. So think about a picture like that. How you draw that, how you depict that, the way you make the image come out, that's what it means. You understand? Ameen wa fikum. Indeed, those who make suwar, pictures, images. So according to the Malikis, that means the statues specifically. According to other than the Malikis, that's statues and other than statues. Indeed, those who make suwar, pictures, images, they shall be tortured on Judgment Day. Yuqalu lahum, it is said to them, Ahyu ma khalaqtum. Give life to what you have formed. Ay sawwartum. وروى البخاري أيضا أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لعن المصورين. And also Al-Bukhari narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam damned the picture makers or image makers. I wonder what's the case of the people who make movies. Allah knows what's their case. وروى البخاري ومسلم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. Al-Bukhari and Muslim narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا تدخل الملائكة بيتا فيه كلب أو صورة. The angels do not enter a house that has a dog or an image or a surah with a sad. Surah with a sad, not seen. Surah with a sad. What does that mean according to the Malikis? Statues, figures, not flat pictures. What does that mean according to others? Statues and other things. فالصورة إن كانت على هيئة يعيش بها الحيوان. And so, a surah, whichever madhab you want to take, if it has a form of something upon which something could be alive, if it is depicting what is alive, if the surah is depicting what is alive, you say, I wonder what is the case of the people who make movies. I mean, Yani, because aren't they, looks like they're doing something that the Prophet said not to do. But the Malikis have their detail there about figures specifically. Allahu Alam, those people. Some of them, they might think they're gods, really, because they make pictures. It's like in their imaginations, they're like they made a universe. So and then the devil dragged them to think about themselves that they're gods in some way. Also, a lot of them did a lot of haram. Yani, look at, for example, what's his name, who just died not too long ago. Stan Lee. He made a lot of pictures in books and movies with lots of kufr, lots of kufr. Subhanallah. Blasphemy, gods and eternities and creating things, all kinds of blasphemy. Atheism and paganism. Wal-'iyadhu billahi ta'ala. And so the image, if it was upon a form that depicts what is living, تَمْنَعُ دُخُولَ مَلَائِكَةِ الرَّحْمَةِ, those pictures or images prevent the entrance of the angels of mercy. وَلَوْ كَانَتْ فِي صُنْدُوقٍ دَاخِلَ الْبَيْتِ, even if those were in a box inside the house, like in your basement, in the closet with the light off, still. إِلَّا إِذَا كَانَتْ عَلَى نَحْوِ بِسَاطٍ يُدَاسٍ, unless it's like on a rug that gets stepped on. A rug, a carpet that gets stepped on, that's not haram then. Yalla, yani. It looks like that's a depiction of something that's supposed to be alive, isn't it? That is a depiction of something, yani, like I said now, a few minutes ago, when you make the picture, the image, it's like a word. A picture is like a word. It has a meaning. What does that picture mean there? Doesn't that mean it's alive? Yes, it does. You said you heard the hadith, the kids' toys are exempt. No, that's too broad. Not like that. That's too broad, just to say kids' toys are exempt. No. According to Malik, yani, what did we say? Didn't we say all the scholars agreed? There's no difference in opinion that figures are haram. Figures. The Malikis agreed that figures are haram. What they said is not haram is not figures, like a flat picture. Khalas, we're not going to finish this one today, but it's okay, yani. Don't be confused, brothers and sisters. Just make it in a way that it can't be alive. Can something be alive without arms and legs? Tell me yes or no. Okay, I'll tell you. Yes, it can be alive. Yes, it can be alive without arms and legs. So if it's a figure of something that can be alive, it's haram.